The forest was alive with death. Tall red trees stretched toward a dark sky, their leaves sharp like blades. The ground was wet and uneven, pulling at every step. Strange sounds filled the air, clicks, growls, and distant screams that never lasted long. Through this nightmare, an alien girl ran for her life. Her name was Sa-Ili. She was not a soldier. She had never held a weapon. Her hands were meant for research tools and data screens, not blood and fear. But now her hands were shaking as she ran, clutching her injured arm. Purple blood slipped through her fingers and dropped onto the ground behind her, marking her path like a trail of death. Her breathing was broken. Each breath hurt. Her chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on her heart. Behind her, the beasts were coming. They were called Ravagers, monsters, feared across this planet. Massive bodies covered in thick, armor-like skin. Long claws that could rip metal. Jaws strong enough to tear apart vehicles. Once they started hunting, they never stopped. Saley heard them now, low growls. Heavy footsteps. The sound of trees snapping as if they were nothing. She cried out, her voice thin and weak, but the forest did not care. Hours ago, her life had been normal. She had been aboard a survey ship, laughing softly with her crew as they scanned an uncharted world. Then the storm hit. Systems failed. The ship screamed as it fell from the sky. Fire, pain, darkness. She woke up alone. No crew, no signal. No hope now. As she ran through the forest, Saley knew the truth. She was not going to survive. Her foot caught on a root. She fell hard. Pain exploded through her leg. She screamed as her knee hit the ground at the wrong angle. When she tried to stand, her leg refused to move. It was useless. Sa-Ili turned over slowly, fear filling her eyes. The Ravagers stepped out of the trees. 3 of them, their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. Hot breath poured from their mouths as they circled her. One snapped its jaws, impatient. Another scratched the ground, ready to leap. Seely's body shook. She raised her hands, even though she knew it was useless. Her species was small, weak. Prey, tears ran down her face. "I don't want to die," she whispered, though no one could understand her words. The largest Ravager lowered its head and charged. Then, boom. The sound was loud and violent, like thunder tearing the world apart. The charging Ravager collapsed mid-step, its head snapping to the side as its body hit the ground lifeless. The other 2 froze in shock. Boom, another Ravager fell. Purple blood spraying across the trees. The last one turned to run. Something moved fast through the shadows. A dark shape slammed into the fleeing beast, smashing it into a tree with terrible force. Bones cracked. The Ravager dropped, dead before it hit the ground. Silence followed. Saley stared, unable to breathe. Heavy footsteps approached. From between the trees, a figure appeared, tall, broad, walking on 2 legs. A human. He wore damaged combat armor, scratched and burned from battle. One side of his helmet was gone, revealing a face marked with scars. His dark eyes scanned the area carefully, ready for more danger. In his hands was a powerful weapon. Still smoking, Seely's heart pounded in fear. Humans were dangerous. Everyone knew that they were survivors, fighters. A species that refused to die even when the universe tried to kill them. The human looked at her for a long moment. Neither of them moved. Then he slowly lowered his weapon. "You're safe," he said. His voice was deep and tired but calm. The translator made his words clear. Sally tried to speak, but her throat closed. The fear, the pain, the exhaustion, all of it finally broke her. Her vision blurred. She fell forward. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. She gasped in terror. But the human held her gently, careful, like she was something precious instead of weak. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I won't let them hurt you." Sally looked up at him. His face showed pain, not physical, but something deeper, like someone who had lost too much already. "Why?" "Help me," she whispered. "I'm not human." The human was silent for a moment. Then he answered simply, "Because you needed help." That was all. He lifted her carefully and began walking away from the bodies of the beasts. The red forest watched in silence as they left. As Sally slipped into darkness, one thought stayed in her mind. If this human had not come, I would have been torn apart, and she did not yet know the truth. This human was far more dangerous than the monsters he had just killed. Sally woke to pain. Not sharp pain, but deep and heavy, spreading through her body like cold water. For a moment, she thought she was dead. The air felt strange, too clean, too quiet. She opened her eyes slowly. The red forest was gone. Above her was a metal ceiling, scratched and dented. Soft white lights flickered, humming gently. The ground beneath her was warm, not dirt, not leaves. She tried to move and gasped. Her leg burned. "Easy." The voice was close. Sally turned her head and saw him. The human sat beside her on a low crate, his back against the wall. His weapon rested near his hand, but it was powered down. One of his gloves was off, and his bare hand was wrapped in a dirty bandage soaked with dried blood. Not hers, his. "You're awake," he said quietly. Fear rushed through her body, but she was too weak to scream. Her hands trembled as she pulled them closer to her chest. "Don't be scared," the human said. "You're safe. I sealed the area. Nothing big can get in here." She looked around and realized where she was. A crash pod, human design, small, strong, built for survival, not comfort. "You carried me?" she asked softly. He nodded. 3 kilometers. "You passed out fast." Sally swallowed. Her throat was dry. "My leg." "Broken," he said honestly. "I set it the best I could. It'll hurt, but you'll live. Live." The word felt unreal. She studied him more closely now. His armor was badly damaged, plates cracked, systems dark. There were burns on his arms and dried blood on his neck. He moved slowly, like every motion cost him something. "You're hurt," she said. He shrugged. Nothing new. That answer bothered her. "Why are you here?" she asked. "This world is forbidden. Even my people avoid it." The human looked away for a moment. His jaw tightened. "My ship was shot down," he said. "Wrong place. Wrong time." Sally sensed he was not telling her everything, but she did not push. Silence settled between them. Outside, something howled in the distance. Sally flinched. "They're still out there," she whispered. "Yes," the human said. "And they'll keep coming." Her eyes widened. "Then we must leave." "My people, no signals get out," he said gently. "The storms block everything. We wait, or we die." The words were calm. To calm, Sally's breathing became shallow. "How long have you been alone?" He didn't answer right away. "Long enough." He said finally, Hours passed slowly. The human gave her water from a ration pack. The taste was strange but comforting. He checked her leg again, adjusting the brace he had made from scrap metal and fabric. His hands were steady and careful. "You could have left me," Saley said suddenly. He looked up. "I know. Humans are known for survival," she continued, "for making hard choices. Saving me slows you down." "Yes," he said simply. "Then why?" "Because," he interrupted, his voice firmer now, "I already left someone once." Saley froze. He stared at the floor. His fists clenched. "I told myself it was logical," he said quietly, "that it was necessary, that one life wasn't worth two." He laughed softly, without humor. "Turns out, logic doesn't help you sleep." Saley felt something tighten in her chest. "I won't do that again," he finished. Outside, the ground shook. A deep, heavy vibration rolled through the crash pod. Dust fell from the ceiling. Saley's eyes widened in terror. What was that? The human stood slowly, grabbing his weapon. "Something bigger than before," he said. Another hit the pod. Metal screamed as claws scraped across the hull. Saley cried out. "They found us." "Yes," he said calmly. "They always do." The lights flickered. A section of the wall dented inward. "You can't fight that." She shouted, "You'll die." The human glanced back at her. Then he smiled. Not a happy smile, a determined one. "Then I'll make sure it dies first." He stepped toward the door, sealing his helmet back in place. Saley reached out weakly. "Wait." He paused. "You saved me," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, don't throw your life away." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he replied, softly, "Kid, my life stopped being worth much a long time ago." He opened the door. The night roared back in Saley, screamed his name, but she didn't even know it. The door slammed, shut behind him. She lay there, helpless, listening to the sounds of battle outside. Gunfire roars, explosions, tears streamed down her face. Please survive. She prayed to any god that might listen, because for the first time since the crash, she didn't want to be alone anymore. The night was alive with danger. Saley could hear it outside the pod, heavy steps, growls, the crunch of broken branches under massive claws. The metal walls vibrated with each impact, making her heart pound in her chest. She pressed her forehead against the cold surface, wishing she could be invisible, wishing she could disappear. Her leg throbbed painfully. Every movement sent sharp jolts through her body. She had tried to crawl toward the door earlier to help, but the human her rescuer had pushed her back. "Stay inside," he had commanded. "This is my fight." She had wanted to argue, to insist she could help somehow, but fear had silenced her. She understood now what true danger meant. The beasts outside were not ordinary predators. They were cunning, intelligent, and ruthless. They could smell fear and weakness. They could hear every shallow breath. Saley tried to breathe slowly, to calm herself. She thought of her home, of the starlit forests of her planet, of laughter and safety, all shattered in an instant by the crash. And then she thought of him, the human, walking into death for her. She had no words for the feeling that rose in her chest. Gratitude, or fear. It was all tangled together, making her heart ache. A sudden crash against the pod made her scream. Metal groaned and bent inward. Dust fell like rain. Then she heard it, the human's voice, low and commanding. "Back, back, you monsters. A series of sharp sounds followed blasts, the tearing crack of weapons against claws, the screeching roar of pain. Sally covered her eyes, but couldn't look away. She pressed herself against the wall, trembling. Every impact shook the ground beneath her. Through the small window, she could glimpse his silhouette. He moved with strange grace, even in heavy armor, even under pressure. His weapon flashed with every strike, a pulse of light in the darkness. He was shouting, screaming, but not out of panic, out of sheer determination, out of human stubbornness. And then she saw it. One of the beasts, a massive ravager, larger than the others, with jagged black claws, leapt toward him. Its jaws were open, a deadly trap aimed straight for his head. Sally froze, but he did not falter. He rolled to the side, firing his weapon with both hands. The creature's body slammed into the ground, but it rose again, furious. Sally felt her stomach twist with terror. Her mind screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything, but she could not move. Minutes or maybe hours passed in a blur of sound and violence. Each roar, each shot, each impact made her heart pound harder. She could not comprehend how he was still standing, still fighting, still alive. And then she realized something terrifying. He was not just fighting to survive. He was fighting to protect her. Finally, after what felt like eternity, silence fell. Heavy, trembling silence. The thuds of distant movement faded. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Sally dared to look through the window again. He was standing, covered in scratches and blood, armor battered, but alive. Around him lay the bodies of the monsters, broken, defeated, lifeless. The human's chest rose and fell rapidly. He dropped his weapon and looked up, scanning the area. And then his eyes found hers. Sally's lips trembled. She wanted to scream, to run to him, to hug him, to say anything, but no words came. Her hands shook as she crawled toward him, desperate and weak. He looked at her and for the first time smiled softly, not triumphantly, not arrogantly, but quietly, tenderly. "You're okay," he said. "You're alive." Sally's knees buckled and she fell against the pod wall. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unstoppable. I thought you," he crouched, resting a hand on the metal wall near her. "I'm still here," he said, "still standing, still breathing, still holding on." The words, simple as they were, made her chest tighten. She realized that the human was more than strong, more than brave. He was relentless, unyielding, and completely unwilling to let anyone, especially her, die. Sally's gaze dropped to the floor. For the first time since the crash, she felt something new, hope. A fragile, trembling hope, but real. The night outside was not safe. The forest still hid dangers, waiting to strike. But inside that battered crash pod, Sally understood one truth. As long as the human was there, she had a chance to survive, a chance to live, and maybe to trust again. The night stretched long, silent now except for the soft hum of the pod. Sally curled into herself, staring at the human's silhouette in the distance, thinking of the monsters he had faced, and for the first time she dared to whisper one word aloud: "Thank you." It floated in the air, fragile and small. But somehow she felt it reach him. Somehow she felt him understand. This was the beginning of something neither of them could yet imagine. The sun rose slowly over the red forest, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold. But inside the crash pod, there was no warmth, No light that could chase away fear. Only the quiet hum of machinery, broken only by the human moving quietly. Checking weapons, checking the walls. Checking her, Sally lay still, her broken leg wrapped tightly. Her body sore from the previous night's horrors. Every muscle ached. Every breath hurt, yet her mind could not rest. She kept thinking of him, the human, how he had stood against impossible odds, how he had thrown himself between her and death without hesitation. She had been a stranger, an alien, small, weak, alone, and he had risked everything for her. Her chest tightened with an emotion she could not name, gratitude, fear, something deeper, stronger, a trembling realization that, in the vast, merciless universe, someone had chosen her life over his safety. "Kid," the human said, breaking her thoughts. His voice was calm but edged with fatigue. "You have to move. We can't stay here forever. They'll come back." Sally struggled to her feet, leaning on the brace he had made. Pain flared, but she gritted her teeth and held on. Where do we go?" He studied the red forest through the pod window. "There's a canyon a few clicks from here. Natural walls. No ravager can climb it. We can hide, rest, plan." She nodded weakly. I'll follow you." He offered a hand. She took it, and for the first time since the crash, felt a strange comfort in human touch. Strong, steady, protective. She had never known safety like this, not in her home world, not anywhere. The forest outside was dangerous, but the human moved confidently. Step by step, he led her through twisted roots and sharp leaves. She stumbled. He caught her. She shivered. He adjusted her brace. Every movement spoke of his care, of his relentless determination to keep her alive. Hours passed as they moved. The forest seemed endless, each shadow hiding threats. But each time a distant roar echoed, each time a branch cracked in the dark, she saw him act first, strike hard, never falter. And every time she realized something impossible. She was beginning to trust him completely. By mid-afternoon, they reached the canyon. High, jagged walls surrounded a narrow valley. It was perfect. Safe for now, the human lowered her gently to the ground. "Rest," he said. "Eat, drink, recover. We'll move again before nightfall." She watched him. Even now, even after everything, he did not relax. He scanned the forest constantly, repositioned his weapon, checked the perimeter. His vigilance was exhausting just to watch. "Why do you do this?" she asked softly. "Why risk so much for a stranger?" He paused, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Because someone once saved me," he said quietly. "And I swore I wouldn't let the same thing happen again. Not if I could stop it." She felt a lump in her throat. That simple sentence carried more weight than anything else. Someone had seen him die or almost die, and still he survived. Still he gave life to others. Still he fought for strangers. "You're different," she whispered. "Humans, you're not all selfish. Some of you care." He gave a faint smile, almost sad. "We care when we choose to. That's the difference." For the first time, Sally allowed herself to breathe fully. She ate the small rations he offered, drank from the filtered water, and let her body rest. But her mind kept returning to him, the human who had saved her life. The one who now stayed awake even while she slept, guarding her like a shadow. Night came, and with it, more dangers. The forest outside was alive again with growls and the subtle crunch of claws on stone. Celie shivered, fear creeping back, but she no longer felt hopeless. She had someone she could depend on, someone who would not leave, someone who would fight to the last breath to keep her alive. She watched him light a small fire, the glow reflecting off his scarred face. He moved carefully, not for himself, but for her. Every motion spoke of care, of unspoken promises. Celie swallowed her fear. Her tears fell silently, not for herself, but for the gratitude and awe that filled her heart. "I don't know how to repay you," she whispered. He looked at her and shook his head. "You don't need to. Just survive. That's enough." She nodded, understanding more than words could say. This human was no ordinary being. He was a shield, a guardian, someone who chose life over death. Not for glory, not for reward, just because it was right. As the fire crackled softly, Celie realized something profound. The bond between them was forming. Not just survivor and savior, but something stronger, deeper. A connection forged in fear, in battle, in the raw reality of facing death together, and in the silence of the canyon, with the shadows of the forest creeping closer. She knew one thing clearly: as long as he was there, she would live. The canyon was quiet, but the silence was heavy. Celie lay on the ground, her leg aching, her body sore from the endless flight and the brutal fight of the previous night. Every muscle ached, but the pain was nothing compared to the fear that still lingered. She had survived, but barely. The human sat nearby, sharpening a blade with a methodical calm, the firelight reflecting off his scarred face. His eyes, dark and serious, scanned the canyon walls constantly. Every sound, every shadow, every rustle of leaves made him tense. He was still on alert, still watching, still protecting her. Celie wanted to speak, but found it difficult. She had never been so exhausted, so overwhelmed, and yet so safe in the presence of a human. She barely knew. The contrast of terror and comfort made her chest tighten in a strange way. She realized she had never felt this before, ever truly trusted anyone outside her own people. "Why do you keep looking out there?" she finally asked, her voice small. The human paused, not looking at her. "Because it's not safe. It never is." He paused again. "And because someone has to." Celie's eyes filled with tears. She didn't understand the full weight of his words, but she felt the truth behind them. He wasn't just fighting monsters outside, he was fighting to keep hope alive for her, to give her a chance at life when all odds were against her. Her thoughts drifted to her family lost in the crash, probably dead. She swallowed hard, forcing herself not to think about it too much. She had no time for despair. Not yet. Not while he was here. Hours passed slowly. The sun moved lower, painting the canyon in deep shades of red and gold. Celie tried to eat, but her stomach felt twisted. The human noticed and handed her a small ration pack. "You need strength," he said simply. She accepted it, biting slowly, trying to find energy in the dry food. Every chew reminded her of the fragility of life, the constant struggle, the thin line between survival and death. She glanced at him again. He had not eaten. He never did while she was present, always putting her first. "Why do you care?" she asked softly, almost a whisper. "Why risk so much for someone you barely know?" The human looked at her then, really looked. There was no armor, no weapon, no mask of a fighter. Just a human man with scars and tired eyes that had seen too much. Because, he said, after a long pause, I've lost people I couldn't save, and it destroyed me. I promised myself, if I ever could save someone, I would, even if it costs me everything. Celie's heart twisted. She understood then. This was not bravery, not heroism. It was guilt transformed into determination, sorrow turned into protection. He carried the weight of lives he could not save, but he refused to let her be one of them. A sudden sound outside made them both freeze. A branch snapped far off in the canyon. The human's hand went to his weapon instinctively. Celie's pulse jumped. She wanted to hide, to run, to scream, but the human simply stood and moved toward the noise. His movements were calm, deliberate, precise. Minutes passed. The sound turned out to be nothing. The falling rock, but Celie realized something vital. His courage wasn't just about strength. It was about fear. He was afraid to. He knew the danger. He could die any moment. Yet he still moved forward. For her, she felt a warmth she had never known before. Gratitude, yes, but more than that, awe, admiration, respect, and a quiet, trembling sense of trust. Night fell again, and the canyon walls darkened, shadows stretching long and threatening. The human built a small perimeter with traps, sharp stakes hidden in the dirt, and makeshift alarms. Celie watched silently, trying to memorize every motion. She wanted to help, wanted to contribute, but she was still too weak, too small, too fragile. He noticed and said quietly, "Rest, watch, learn, that's enough for now." She nodded, swallowing her pride. And she did rest, though sleep was thin and shallow. Her mind constantly replaying the horrors they had escaped, the monsters outside, and the human who had risked everything to save her. As she lay there, she realized something terrifying. She was beginning to rely on him, not just for survival, but emotionally. Her heart clung to his presence, to his strength, to his determination. She knew that without him she would have no chance, and worse, she knew she would feel the emptiness, the loss, more than she could bear if something happened to him. For the first time since the crash, Celie understood the full truth of the bond forming between them. It was not just survivor and savior. It was deeper, something fragile, something precious, something that could not be ignored. She closed her eyes, letting the firelight warm her face, listening to the quiet strength beside her. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that they could survive the night, hope that maybe, somehow, she would live to see another day with him, and hope that he would always be there the next day. The canyon was quiet to quiet. Celie could feel it in her chest, a tight knot of dread she could not shake. She had learned, in the short time she had survived, that danger rarely gave warnings. Silence often meant the dead were watching, waiting, circling. The human moved steadily, checking the traps he had set. His movements were calm, but every glance toward the forest was sharp, alert, unrelenting. Celie watched him. She could see the fatigue under his armor, the lines of worry on his face, but he did not stop. Not for a moment. Not even to eat. Not even to breathe deeply. "Why don't you rest?" she asked softly. Her voice was timid, but she wanted to break the invisible wall he had built around himself. He glanced at her, dark eyes shadowed. "If I stop, they'll find us. If I stop, you die. I can't let that happen." She swallowed hard. His words were simple, but the weight behind them crushed her. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for her life. Every second, every breath, every heartbeat was dedicated to keeping her alive, and she had no way to repay him. Hours passed. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the canyon floor. Sally tried to move carefully, practicing on her broken leg. She wanted to learn to be useful, but every step sent pain shooting through her body, sharp and cruel. The human noticed and came over. He crouched beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You'll learn," he said quietly. "But not today. Today you heal." She looked at him, eyes wide. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said firmly. "Not to me. Not ever." Something inside her twisted. She had never heard such words. No one had ever said them to her before. Not her teachers, not her family, not even her friends. And now this human, this strange, fierce human, told her that her life mattered, that she mattered. Night fell, bringing with it a cold wind that rattled the canyon walls. Sally huddled near the fire, watching him check the perimeter again. She wanted to speak, to ask him questions, to understand him. But she realized she could not. Words felt small, useless against the enormity of what he had done for her. Suddenly, a low growl rolled through the canyon. Sally froze, her heart leaping. The sound came from above the canyon walls. The human spun toward the noise, weapon ready. "Stay down," he ordered, but Sally couldn't move. Fear rooted her to the spot. She watched as shadows shifted along the cliff edges. 3 massive ravagers, larger and faster than any they had faced before, began to descend. Their eyes glowed with hunger. Their claws scraped against the rock. The human took a deep breath. "Stay close," he said. Sally did. Her body pressed against his side as he moved forward, weapon raised. He didn't hesitate, not once. Each shot, each swing of his blade was precise, deadly. Each time one of the beasts lunged, he countered with skill and strength that seemed impossible for a single human. But then one of the ravagers lunged at her. She screamed, frozen in terror. In that instant, the human dove in front of her, taking the full force of the creature's attack. Pain exploded from his side as he struck the beast with everything he had. He staggered but did not fall. Sally felt tears blur her vision. He could have died. For her, again. Her chest ached with a strange, intense feeling, fear, gratitude, awe, and something else she could not name. She realized then that she trusted him completely. Her life was in his hands, and she knew he would not fail. The fight continued, long and grueling, but by the time the moon rose high in the sky, the beasts lay dead. The human was breathing hard, bruised, bleeding but alive. Sally stumbled forward, pressing her hands against his chest. You can't keep doing this alone," she said, voice trembling. He looked down at her, exhaustion and determination warring in his eyes. "You'll have to learn to fight," he said. "If we survive, it won't just be me anymore." Her heart raced. She realized the truth in his words. Survival would not be easy, but together they could face anything that night. As she wrapped herself in the thin blanket he offered, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "I will trust you." Completely, and for the first time, she felt it real hope. Not just for surviving the next battle, but for surviving this new world with him. Dawn broke over the canyon, pale light spilling across jagged rocks. The red forest beyond looked less terrifying in daylight, But Sally knew it had not changed. The monsters were still out there. The world was still dangerous. But for the first time, fear did not dominate her thoughts. She moved slowly, testing her leg. It still ached, every step a sharp reminder of the battles she had survived. But she could stand. She could walk. And she could follow him, her human. He was already awake, sitting on a rock, sharpening his blade. The early light highlighted the deep lines on his face, the scars, the exhaustion. But his eyes were alive, alert, and focused. He looked at her and gave a small nod. "You're ready," he said. His voice was soft, almost tired, but it carried something stronger than words. "We move before nightfall." Sally swallowed and nodded. Her chest tightened. She wanted to say, "More thank him, tell him how much he meant," but words felt small. Everything she had experienced in the past days, the terror, the pain, the endless flight, and the brutal fight was too big for language. They moved through the canyon carefully, step by step. Sally watched him constantly, noting how he anticipated danger, how he read the forest like an open map. Every time a shadow moved, he was ready. Every time